We are a grassroots organization charged with advocating and educating our community about sickle cell and sustaining our families and community revolving around sickle cell. And so one of our projects is we do sickle cell camp every year. Obviously through the pandemic, that's been kiboshed, but we also have other projects like this one here, which is education, talking about nutrition. Here, we also have projects to talk about other things as well. And that's a little bit about the Sickle Cell Task Force.
Yeah,
thank you for participating.
Thanks, Ken. And again, we're just glad that you're here, glad that you're wanting to learn more and more. I think that's really one of our goals for Education Days, is just to get information so that you can be making choices for yourself and for your family. Just want to remind you, you can always join us on our Facebook page, Seattle Sickle Cell Task Force. We do in partnership with Odessa Brown and Seattle Children's. There's a mindfulness class offered every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And then every Thursday. Ken, is it at 6 on Thursdays?
It's at 8 o'clock on Thursdays.
8 p.m. on Thursdays. Ken is having a chat time to talk about everything and anything. So you're more than welcome to join then. And then every fourth Saturday, we do have our education that begins at 12, as well as every second Saturday of the month, we have an amazing game night, which Layla and John helped to run, and it is an amazing time to hang out, pizza and game night. So we're super glad that you're here. I don't want to take up too much more time. I just want to pass it on to Dr. Phuong and just really just open it up. Dr. Phuong, thank you so much for being willing to come. You know, it's funny when I was telling people about it, it was so funny. I was talking to the Mary Bridge folks and they were like, oh, she works down here sometimes, or she used to. And then someone from the UW was like, oh, we know Dr. Phuong, she does some work over here. And I was like, wow. So it's super glad to have you. Love that you were willing to come and talk about nutrition with us. So thank you for being willing to come. And I'm really going to pass it over to you to let you really have the floor for the next few minutes and feel free to talk about, share the screen and teach us something new.
Oh my goodness, such a great introduction. By the way, I'm not a doctor, just Phuong, lactation, nutritionist. And yes, I'm all over this region. I used to work at Mary Bridge, still on call there, with multi-care for over 16 years, venture up to Children's without the main campus for a year, but then found Odessa Brown, and this is it. This is Odessa Brown's home. Is home for so many reasons for me. I love the mission, and when Alex introduced me to Foxy, and this is where I like to spend my day, meeting family, share nutritions. My heart is in with especially family who need a lot and don't have a lot of services is where my heart is. So trying to really advocate and connect families to all the things that you deserve to have, including nutrition and all the knowledge and support. And it's so cool to be part of this. I have to say I'm very green with sickle cell. So I did some studying, and I've been with Odessa Brown for just over a year, almost 2 actually. And so as I preparing these information, I was like, my goodness, there's so much more we could do. So I feel like I find myself a wonderful pocket of work and serving that I look forward to continue. So thank you for having me. So today, when Foxy reached out to me, like nutrition is so important. And so when I have a chance to share this, today's is very general, and I just want to be as casual as possible. So stop and ask questions. And Foxy, I'm gonna need your help with any questions come up in the chat. Feel free to stop me, because I want this to be for you. And I'm hoping to provide some information and some practical, practice, because there's a lot of times like nutrition is knowledge. Like you can just find them all over the internet. Dr. Google takes over for many years now. But when it comes to individualized, that's what I'm hope to be part of, because then with all my experience working with different, with families and learn a lot from family, I hope to share. So that's more like, troubleshooting together. And that's what I'm hoping for our sessions to be more focused on. But I'm gonna start out with very general information, how nutrition is so important for all of us, but it's also for living with sickle cell. So that's where I'm gonna start. And then we're gonna have is really casual. This is for you. This is all about you and how, whichever I could do to help, that's where it's going to be. So nutrition is this time, what can we do to nourish our body and living with sickle cell? So food is fuel. That is no doubt about it. I like that concept, because we think food is a lot of things then for our body, emotions, relationship, cultures, so many things. But when we come to the very basic, food is fuel. And when you have sickle cell, food is also like a medicine to help nourishing and managing it and live life as the best possible way. The best things about when it comes to food is you have the power that you can take control and you can choose the food, but it is helping the body, either for yourself or your loved ones. And I have to disclaim, I'm pediatric all these times I become a dietitian. And then I went into kids, and I stay with this, with the kids. That's where I hang out. So some of these information will be also for adults applicable, but it's mostly kids focused. So stop me if I like to getting too much into the kid work.
Yeah, you definitely have a mix of adults and kids here, so feel free to mix it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so food is fuel and food is medicine, and food is one of the really powerful way to help your body living through with sickle cell. And there is the power to choose and caters to the way it fits your family's nutrition, your food style and what you eat at home. But before I go further, I want to acknowledge the stress, the burden living with for the sickle cell and any chronic illnesses is a lot of stress on emotional, mentally, basically, resources, high demand. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge this is real. It's impacting us, and there's things that we could do to kind of address it. Because when it's come to food, there's many barriers to it. I mean, I hope to address this a little later as we go on in the talk, and I would love to brainstorm. I'm all for trying to get funding and run programs to help provide access. So Foxy, that's something I would love to reach out to you after the presentation and see what we can do.
Sounds great.
Yep. So since food is fuel, we need to create the best fuel for the body. And the focus for care and for a body with sickle cells is there's many nutrients that are needed. And there is this relationship between food and how your body function, and then how that kind of stay on top of your condition and prevention, like prevent crisis in this situation. So there's so many food that have a powerful impact. And the question is where and how. And if you have a child with sickle cell, then there's a lot of, pickiness and things come in. Hopefully we'll discuss some of that at the later in the presentation. But these are the primary nutrients that is impacting your body. And so it's protein is a big one, part of it because your body going through a lot of breakdown. So it's like catabolic or high metabolism or high energy, whichever term you want to use. But protein is a big one that your body need. And then when we don't have enough, when we have increased risk of infection because the protein is not only for muscles, but it's also immune system. And when you take medication, the protein is actually like this little vehicle that you carry to medication to where it should work. So if we have a pool of like not a lot of vehicle, the medication don't go to where it should go. And so it's make the medication less effective. B12, folic acid, these things that just help your red blood cells, to be full and carry oxygen. Calcium and vitamin D is impacting through whole lifespan, especially for kids, because that's when you maximizing and you kind of packed in your bones. And as adults get older, if you don't have enough calcium and vitamin D, the risk of osteoporosis is quite high. And then water, like fluid is so important for all of us. We're like 80% of water made of. It's hard to believe, but it is. And then when you have sickle cell, your body demand more because dehydration will put you at risk for crisis as well. So drinking water, how you will share how much we need and try, like sometimes we think of water, we just think of water to drink, but there's also in food, especially in fruit and vegetables. So that's the other thing that you want to focus on. And there's so many other important nutrients, things like vitamin C is also, it's like it helps your bodies with prevent infections. There also zinc, this is another bones, things that help with the bones. And there's protein, different kind of protein. So there will be supplementations that sometimes I would provide for patients that if they need it, or for patients who have a lot of crisis that we want to look into supplementation in addition to what they eat, and so they can get enough. So our bodies are like.
Hey, Phuong, I'm wondering, are you planning to share your screen?
Oh, am I not yet?
No, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm so silly.
No problem.
Can you see the screen now?
Now we can see it, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Foxy.
Oh, no problem.
Yep. So these are the summaries, and I have these slides, and these information are made for you. So if you need any of this in any other way, that's when you reach out to me and you say, hey, could use some more of this. And I can email, there's so many ways for us to share. So these information are for you, and however you want to use it, you use it. So this is nothing that I would need to be held back. So these are the nutrients. I'm going to go into each of them and kind of give you some ideas, because when it's come to protein, it's very tricky with sickle cell, because we want to get enough protein, but we don't want to overload the iron either. And a lot of protein are high in iron, especially in animal products. So we can eat some protein that have from meat, but we do want a lot from plant-based and from eggs and dairy. So we can go into that next. Let me see. All right. So proteins, I focus more on proteins that more complete. So protein is some of these food are just, it's give the protein, but some of these protein also have vitamins and minerals, and that's what needed on the list earlier. So I like these for many reasons, because they not only one nutrient, but they combo, like I call them superfood. And these like legumes or beans, all types of beans, lentils are great. Chickpea, hummus, tofu, grains. Some of these grains are really good. It has protein, it has the B vitamins that you need. So it's like a one-stop shopping for all the nutrients in some of these food. Nuts and seeds, if kids are not allergic, or you yourself are not allergic, these are great things to have. And it's also like a good snack food. And then eggs, egg is excellent. Dairy as well, lean protein. We do meats in moderation. But the protein is, if you think of your body's like a pound per se. So you go by how many pounds to a certain pounds, but most of the times we go about 0.7 grams per pound. So up to like 1 gram per pound. So we do need a lot of protein. The good thing in the, American, in this country, we could do protein easier than the other nutrients. But for a sickle cell consideration, we do want to have some more plant-based protein. So it's required more like creative with recipes and things.
Phuong, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
2 questions. One, I see Jason is asking, is fish lumped in with, let's see what he's saying, lumped in with chicken and beef? So eating chicken and beef, do you have to moderate even your fish?
No, so the meats is in moderation, but chicken and fish, you can liberalize it a little more. So meat, I'm thinking of like red meat is in moderation.
Yeah. And he wants to know about barbecue ribs. We're not going to answer that question. But another question though, with
I will take it offline, totally.
Another question about proteins is we hear about, if you're seeing in the chat, 2 things, soybean or tofu, there's been some talk about whether it's really healthy. And then I see a question in here from Ken that is about, what about tuna? Can you answer those 2 questions? Yes,
tuna is acceptable for this, and we think about once or twice a week would be safe for the protein and for like other coppers and other things that you concern about. Tofu, we don't think of it every day as a food because there is some estrogen like, and how it's raised. However, if you think of like having is versatile, and so you could do a little balance in it out. So you have an option. You don't want to just go for those all the times, but it's a nice add-on option. So everything we kind of space out, because if we limit it to certain couple of things, then we kind of stuck with it. And when it comes to kids, it's very hard to convince them to repeat it more than twice a week.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about eating animal-based protein, the word moderation, can you clarify what that means? Is that 3 times a week? Is that twice a week? What is that? Ideally.
Thank you for that question. It's just like, this is where I have what is in my mind, but it come out really vague. So thanks for clarifying. I would say about 3 times a week would be what I'm aiming for. And then of course, when I meet with family, I look at their labs and things. And then I kind of like, I know where their labs works are at. So we know that flexibility. So that's when we have a little more of a individualized in there. Okay. And I think I would go for chicken, turkey, even pork if it's not cultural preference. But beef is one that I'm trying to limit. But I also want it to be part of normal life. Like we want to have everything in there as much as possible. So it's more on the balance in what you eat, and then what your last profiles look like.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Jason can eat those ribs every now and again.
Yes. See, I was gonna give Jason that offline. I like to include things because it's part of all illnesses or whichever in life, you want to be as normalized as possible. And when with kids in mind, I just want them to feel like they are wonderful and complete regardless what condition they have. So I try to avoid a time where you have to make them feel like stand out, because if it's not necessary, that's my first focus, is their whole overall well-being.
Can we add one question here about supplements for protein? I know a lot of people try the powders and the different things to add protein. Could that be possible for sickle cell patients?
Yes, that is possible, especially if I have patients who having some recurrent of crisis. Then because when you go into that, the breakdown is really, really fast. And that's one of the one that if you break even with your protein and then you have a crisis, you lost a lot more than you need to build up. So that's where supplement is appropriate. Although I like to say that when you drink those protein supplements means to complement something else. So, but you do need to still have a basis of the food that are in different food groups. So the supplement, the protein can go in there and have the vitamins to work where it should be working. Because if you give the protein in the protein powder, it comes in as just like these protein blocks. And for it to do what it's supposed to do, you need a lot of other nutrients from other fruit and vegetable. So it could go through that whole cycle process and be to functional, versus like if you have too much and they not been used, like these are construction blocks. But if you don't have all the little, concretes and things pieced them together, they're just gonna be blocks that not used, and then your kidney have to filter them out. And so we want to be mindful. And then when you don't have enough hydration and you have a lot of extra protein that you don't use, your kidneys take a hit for it. So when patients taking supplement, I like to know I support supplement, but I also say supplement alone is not going to give you the extra protein that you need. You need this whole, for kids, it's Lego. You cannot have one shaped Lego and build a ship. You have to get all the little wedges in different size and things so they can come together. But that's just a great question.
Nice. One last question from the crew. It looks like about portion sizes for meat. One of the questions around the ribs was, how many ribs can I have? So just love to hear. I think you did a little bit of that about the weight, but can you reiterate how much meat should you be having?
I even myself belong to the Nutrition Academy. I don't like their recommendation because I do love meat. 3 ounces is their serving size, and I think it's crazy. I go to Black Angus, and there's no way I'm going anything less than 6 ounces or 8. So we do portion size. I think, like when I tell family, like the recommendation is 3 ounces, which is a deck of cards. Reality, practice at home. If you do about 8 ounces, I'm okay with that. Like if it's red meat, like if you do 8 ounces, I'm okay with that. Because, like those quarter powder, they no longer, like a double quarter powder is no longer the 3 ounce of protein. So I say aim for about 8. So ribs, it depends on what kind of rib. Jason's like, if you think of like, the long one or the short one. But the three long ribs, I think it'll be fine. If you have the baby back ribs, the whole rack, then, like Applebee kind of thing, then we just need to like cut it to about a third of what they serve it.
Okay.
And then you have your vegetables. You definitely need them so the protein can turn to where it needs to turn.
Great. One final question. Lamb. Is lamb a good red meat?
Lamb is a good meat, and we use a lot in some of our African East and West African families. So I support that, and it's a good like good protein for 5 hours, I still stick it to about 3 times a week.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
But better choice than beef.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yes. I love this. This is a lot more interactive. I like this a lot more than just go through my slice.
Oh, you're gonna get some questions when you start talking about taking meat away. But I love it. I think this is a great conversation. And I'm just speaking for myself, which others can chime in by all means. But it's been helpful to just hear specifics. I like if someone can tell me specifically what I can do, I know how to adjust, right? So the moderation conversation around 2 to 3 times a week is really, really helpful. But what I also hear you saying is diversify your proteins.
Yes,
Make
definitely
sure you're not-
diversify it.
Yeah, great,
Yep.
great. Can we pause just for the sake of that? Does anyone want to come off chat and just say one thing, even in the protein conversation alone, that you just learned? This is just helpful too for Phuong as she continues to do her presentations. But what's something that you just learned? You can put it in the chat too if you want. What's an aha you're having?
Diversifying the proteins is something I learned because typically I usually eat a lot of chicken, and so diversifying that, maybe adding lamb or more red meat or pork or something like that might be helpful.
Thanks, Ken. Kendra says that I can still eat tuna. Yes, Kendra.
Yes, yes.
All
And
right. Well,
I think also just the importance of having these other sources of protein and how they really need to be emphasizing protein outside of meat.
Yeah.
And I also share these all protein alternative because I work with families with food insecurity, and food access is a burden for all of us. And I'm terrified to see what the pandemic is doing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So these ones is a little less costly as well. Yeah. All right. Just let me know if there's any other questions. Otherwise, we can go to the next slides. Again, this is for you. So the slides can be altered however it needs.
There is a question about cashews. Does cashews have a good sense of protein in them?
Yes, it does. It does have protein, and it also have some zinc in there as well. So I list some of these nuts because it's common. But there's like pretty much all the nuts actually are good. They have like sometimes it's not just the protein, but you don't want to like when there's a combo, then it's a good one because most of them will have zinc, will have some protein, they have some good fat in there, and you do need the energy. The calories, a big thing. So there's a good fat in there as well. So I would go for those.
And do you recommend salted or unsalted nuts, or a mix of them?
I would go unsalted because it helps with the kidneys part of it. So I'm thinking of this when we are with the hydration status that your body needs, because you break down so much protein. You do need more hydration than the salt. If you have too much salt, it's not like I'm not worried. This is separate from hypertension and things, but it does contribute into how the kidneys working. So I'm going more for unsalted. And now some unsalted is just so hard to do. Then what I do, I mix them. I mix everything. You buy the unsalted and the salted and you mix it. Just like the kids I see, they only like honey nut cereal. And I'm like, you can't have it all the time. So how about buy a regular box of honey nuts and you mix them in, and it's doable. So we don't have to do one or nothing.
Great. This is really helpful. Thank you.
Yes. It's all about real life. Because I think textbook is always perfect, but it's hard to apply in real life. All right, let's talk about fibers. Because that's the other part. And this is where I have like faces with patients, little ones, that we talk about fibers, because we talk about poops. I talk about food and poop in one conversation. Because it's just like, especially when you have unique pain nets, it's really a big thing for constipation. And then constipation is hard and it's very affecting kids pediatrics. So we talk about carbohydrates. So these are carbs or grains or whichever you call, but these are good source. These again are kind of like a power a superfoods per se, because these have fibers, they have lots of B vitamins, they have zinc in there, and some of them have some iron. Like we don't want to avoid iron, like avoid completely. We want to maintain iron from the good sources of food. So we do not take like multivitamin with iron extra. But we do need to have some iron, because iron deficiency is also happening, and then iron overload. So we kind of tread this very finely. But we do need to have some basic irons in there. And some of these food will have them. I love all the B's on here that these food have. And grits is another one. It has high iron, but it's had a lot of fibers and other vitamins. So I'm supporting that. And if you eat grits every day and I see you in clinic, then I was like, I'll look at your labs and things where you at, and we could do something about it if we need to. But I don't want to exclude it out, because these are great food. And if teens have sickle cells, these fibers and these whole grains help them feel full. So then we cannot balance between having enough calories and not overdoing some of the carbs calories that contribute into fat, creating our fat tissues, because there is some of that. So I just want them to feel, to get full, but full with like nutrient rich, like the best fuel blend as possible. So these are some of the starches that are good to have.
What's your view on microwave popcorn?
Microwave popcorn with the one that comes in a bag and it's have all butter in it, then I say maybe on a Friday night when you watch movie, that's good. But if you popping them for snacks on a daily basis, then I think you might as well get the kernel and pop them. And because they are loaded with salts. And again, I'm thinking of hydration status and kidney. I don't like too much salts for that reason. But, and then there's some pre-pop ones. But the smell of popcorn in the microwave is comforting. It's still, I have them at home. We do it again, once a week moderation, like once a week or once every couple of weeks. And the other time, if, kids pack it in their lunch, then it needs to be the one that the bag that is half, is more like less butter and less salt on there. Yep.
A question about iron. Ken, you're going to have to start popping your popcorn on the stove. Old school. There's a question about,
old school.
Yeah, it's good though. About iron overload. If you are experiencing iron overload, are there some foods that you should be avoiding?
Yes, there's a lot of high iron food that you should avoid. And so then we were looking into, that's where the red meat goes down to like once every couple of weeks. And then I need to see how you cook your food. If you have like a cast iron, then we need to switch it out with those. Some of the shellfish, like oysters, which is one of my favorite, that have really high in iron. And then some, some that like oyster, we need to take those out. So when you overload, we definitely can talk about, most of the time you have to treat it with taking, the blood out to clean it out that way, because it's really high. But the other thing you can avoid overload is to avoid transfusion, right? You can avoid that. And so that's what it's like. I find the power in nutrition, so you can maintain to not get into your body to the way you have to like do a lot of intervention and then dealing with the side effect of it. So, but yes, there's treatment for overload in diet.
Oh, okay, yes, cast iron pots do eliminate, I mean, can you talk a little bit about cast iron? Because there's a question about the cast iron pot or
They
skillet.
do, you do get some sorts of direct minerals, irons from that, because that's what I use to treat kids patients who are iron deficient. So if you use cast iron, you do get iron, some iron from that. This depends on how often you use it. So do you need to like get rid of your cast iron today? Not necessarily, but you do want to see where you at with your lab profile and where are your management for it. And then if you are having a risk of high ions, then we do need to not use those cast irons often. Yeah, because they do add ions to your diet, to add to your body directly.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to one of the one that I see faces, but I will convince kids to do is vegetables. These are also my super vegetables. And so when we talk about bones and bone health, these vegetables do have calcium source in there, a great amount of fibers, and all loaded with vitamins, with the B vitamins. And so I like these one. I think color greens is just one of the best thing ever. I love them in all recipe and people. I mean, there's ways that I guess I'm learning. I'm new to the food culture here, not growing up in the country, but I learned to appreciate all these greens. And sometimes I think it takes a long time to cook. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to. Like you could cook it. Like you can have it grandma way, which one of my friends is like, you cannot cook your green unless you do this. And I'm like, okay, well, we do grandma's way recipe once in a while, but for us to do it, surviving with time crunch and everything, there's other ways you can cook them and you still can enjoy the benefit of it. And so these vegetables will have lots of calciums in there, lots of fibers. And the things, other things about fiber is really help with not only constipation, but it's only when you take food in and you have some excess, like cholesterol or fat that is not being absorbed, it could kind of like a scrub. It's kind of like take those out of your GI tract and take it out. So it doesn't contribute into cholesterol and things. So fiber has many, many functions. And so these are some of the good vegetables to have. And when it comes to vegetable, I think most of it things fresh, but I'm advocating for like frozen. Frozen vegetables are great. They are easy. They don't go bad. So it saves some money that way. And many of these things you could do frozen. And so just don't leave the frozen. Now, actually, the frozen vegetables is more nutritious than some of the fresh one. If you don't buy local and you buy things that ship 3,000 miles or whatnot, they lost some of their nutrients. But if you buy frozen, they harvest is right there and flash freeze it is maintain the nutrients. So, and again, with food cost and access, I advocate for this. Can also good. I do ask to drain out the, all the juice out and trying to go with the low sodium. But when you get to choose between not having a lot of vegetable and can, please do can. Because there's still a lot of benefits. We're not going to turn away canned products because of the sodium content in there. Because that versus nothing else, and I go for can any day. So that's where it's not the like no can because of this sodium. Like you want to look at the whole big pictures and how if you can add them in, go for it. But I like frozen for that reason, because fresh is, if you don't get to them, then they go bad. And that's why it costs so much, because most of them is waste.
All right, we got some questions here.
Okay.
Question about raw versus steamed versus stir fried. Is there some suggestion on how you should eat them to get the most nutrients out of them?
My answer is to eat them.
Eat them. Got you.
My answer is to eat them. And however you like them, I think there's a little like minor benefit, like a little, like if you think of 80% versus 75 versus 95 versus nothing, eat them. So however you like them, you would just eat it. I think when we go so much into, if ones want to know specifically for food and the nutrient, I'm happy to help you with that. But what I learned is it's just not enough time to like be really categorized to how you fix this and all that. I just like, just eat them. I think for me, that will go the long way. Yeah, but fresh and steams is good. Stir fries is great. This just depends on the preference. And, you know, when I work with kids, I have to do so many things. So however they eat them is I'm celebrating that.
Yeah. So I hear you saying eat. Just eat them, consume them as much as you can.
Yes.
One question is, well, I'm going to ask that salt question in a minute. I did see that, so I'm just acknowledging that. The question in regards to food and vegetables, are there any vegetables that someone with sickle cell might really want to avoid or just be careful with eating too much of?
Not necessarily, because if there is a nutrient in sickle cell that showed up, I would most likely to address this with other foods than vegetables. I would say there's not a vegetable that I feel like you need to avoid because of your lab. There will be something else that take more precedent.
Awesome.
To address.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question about salt is, are there other terms for salt on labels that we really should be mindful of? Because sometimes it's hard to know that something has a lot of salt in it because it just doesn't say salt.
Mm-hmm. So you just look straight at the sodium on the label. Just don't look at what types of salt they come from. So look at in the sodium. And the general rule of thumb is, you know, when you look at the label, and the label is crazy because it has like a tons of numbers. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, including myself, doing this work. And so you just like look at the serving, how much the serving size is. And then you go down to sodium and you look what the number is. Most of the time, the rule of thumb is 140 milligrams or less is considered acceptable sodium, which a lot of food and packages will have more than 140. So 140 milligrams per serving is, anything less than that is better. And of course, you know, how many servings of it that you get in. I think when it comes to salt, it comes in, even in natural food, it has salt in it. I would not worry about natural foods that have salt in it. I would worry about anything that have salt added to it. So like meat has sodiums in there in small amounts. Some of the vegetables do. But that's not something that we focus on. We focus on anything that have extra added. And so snacks are the worst, right? Because it tends to have a lot of those sodium because that's a flavor enhancer. So if you go for snacks, it's usually sweets, fat, taste, or salt, because that's just enhance the flavor. Does that answer the question, I hope?
I think so, yeah. Awesome. No more questions for this side.
All righty. I'm going to this is the most important, one of the most important nutrient that for sickle cell specifically is folic acid or folate that found in food. And again, you see my leafy vegetable greens come up more on here. But here are the list of food that have really good, because you need to take folic acid, you know, supplements. And so again, the supplements, I stress the term of supplementation. When you take it in, it needs to work on something that is a foundation. It's usually a real food foundation. So if you have some of it there in your food and you need more, then you can take the supplement, and those supplements will be much more effective. But if your diet is very limited in those and you take like a buckload of them, it's still not going to work as good. And then there's either come out in your pee or stores in your fat cells, if it's a fat soluble vitamin or the water soluble. So if it's a kind of water soluble, meaning it's like dissolved in the water, so it comes out in like urinations and poop. And if it's fat soluble, like people take a lot of some of the fat soluble vitamins like an A or D, E. If you have too much of it, then it just stores in your fat. But the taking the vitamins, supplements in a pill form or powder form or whichever form of a supplement, it does not mean you need 100% of your body need. You need some real food as a base for this to be effective. And beets, not sure. Beets is one of my new friends. I find is versatile. I think you can make them in soup. You can grill them. You can steam them. And it's for kids. If I need to check and see if they constipated, you feed them some beets, and if they don't see red coming out, they're constipated. So that's my testing for kids who's constipation. Because sometimes I ask them and they're like, yeah, I go every day. And then I try to figure out what it looked like. I could never get to it. But sometimes it's like, add some beets and we'll find out how many days it takes for it to show up. It's a great, great natural way to test instead of having an x-ray. Okay. So this is folic acid, and then let's go into water. How much fluid we need. So I have this list. This is one from one of the textbooks on fluid, and as you could see, it's based on weight, how much your body need and how many classes. So each of these numbers is 8 ounces. So it's like if there's around 30 pounds and you need 5 to 8 glass. Most of us have a big glass at home or cups. I rarely have anyone that have an 8-ounce cup. So a lot of times you think of your glasses at home is not the same as 8 ounces. So you don't have to you need to know how many ounces in those things that you drink. So these numbers seem scary, but if you look at the size of the glass that you use at home, it's not going to be as much. But we do need to make sure you have a lot of fluid, because this is the number one things to prevent crisis. It's one of the top 5, I believe, to have enough hydration, because when you have enough hydration, and it helps with your body just like functional, like things moving in there, kidneys and clearing out and decrease the stress on the body, and blood pressure is like everything's related to this. So this is one of dehydration could put ones into crisis. So it's definitely good to focus. And so now the question's like, could they drink just water? Because now they have beverages that is just like the biggest industry right now, right? We're trying to avoid anything that's caffeinated as much as possible, but drink your coffee. Don't take your coffee away. Life probably would not be as fun. So keep your coffee, but don't bring 2 pots of it a day either. When you drink coffee, if you drink more than 2 or 3 cups a day, then you need to make up for another extra cup of just water to make up for that kind of diuretics, like this increased urination impact of it. In general, I like to do non-sweetened beverages, because that's where the carbs is just straight carbs. It doesn't have a lot of nutrients per se, and it could add on the way that is not necessary. Anything that tastes sweet and it says 0 calories means it's artificial sweeteners. And so there is for kids particularly, I don't like artificial sweeteners too much, because the we use so many different kinds, and every 5 years they have a new one that has the spotlight seems to be the most natural and whichever it is, and then 5 years later they links to like different illnesses and cancers and things. So for kids, adults, you are free to choose whichever beverages you do, because that you kind of fully own your body. But for kids, I try to avoid these sweeteners as much as possible, because I don't know what the long-term impact for them is. And so anything that doesn't taste sweet, but it has flavor, like it's not like scented and it's okay, but anything that's sweet, tastes sweet, and even is 0 calories, then just do it like, again, a couple of times a week is a good rule of thumb. More water is possible.
You got questions on this one?
Yep.
Are you
I
ready?
would imagine so.
All right, question about Gatorade. Should we be drinking it or not?
I would say you could, the reason why people drink Gatorade is for electrolytes replacement. Most of the time, that's what they advertise for. Water is entirely adequate, because those extra sodiums and things you can get from your natural food. So you're not gonna, so here's an example why I see kids who, athletic kids who plays sports, and I don't recommend Gatorade for those kids unless they play, like if they're in a football field and they play actively, or soccer field and play actively for like an hour and a lot of sweat and things, yeah, they can have a Gatorade. But other than that, water is adequate. Gatorade has, some of them have vitamins added to it. Those are not like the good kind of, when you take supplement, you want to think how much of it they call bioavailability. So like how much of it is going to be used. Those ones are just added there, but they don't tend to like be utilized by the body to turn into energy circle. They tend to be a sidekick that you tend to lose when you pee them out. So I told teens, like, this is an expensive drink, an expensive pee, because you ended up wasting it. They do have a little sugar. So I look at patients, if I'm concerned about how they grow, and if they fill up their appetite for other food, then I definitely say no to Gatorade.
Okay, thank you. Crystal Light, is adding Crystal Light to water diminishing the effects of the water?
It does not. It does not. Crystal Light would be fine. It's a flavor enhancing. It does just have those artificial sweeteners. If I have a kid who drinks a lot of juices and not eating, and then they like, I don't feel hungry, so I'm not going to eat my vegetables, I would try to help moms and dad or grandma to kind of like wean from the juices. Then I use Crystal Light for that. So they can have a little flavor sweetened, but it's not fill up with calories. So there's place for those. And it will not impact the hydration, but it does have artificial sweeteners.
Awesome. All right, here's a question about milk and healthy juices. I'm going to add 2 questions together. So there has been conversation that milk is a great hydrator. Some have said better than water, or up there with water, as well as some other juices. So the question is, what's your thoughts on milk in regards to hydration? And then added in that question is, should we be drinking whole milk, skim milk? Any recommendations there?
So milk as a hydrator, I think is more as a marketing than the literature behind it. Milk does have some of the nutrients in there, you know, when we talk about calcium for the bone. So there is benefit in the milk. So I would okay with drinking the milk. I do caution kids, or kids mostly, because drinking the milk will tend to blunt the appetite for food, because especially the toddler ones, so you run into that kind of like transition from a lot of from breast milk or formula drinking 30, 40 ounces a day, and then going to toddler need to eat food and drink less milk. If they drink a lot of milk, it's going to impact them that eat for other food and packed for nutrient like B's, vitamins, and other things I shared earlier. So limits milk, usually 16 to 24 ounces per day is a general rule of thumb for milk. The rest should be, so that would be 2 to 3 cups a day of milk. And those are 8 ounces cup, not the glass that they have at home. And then so that the milk did help with the hydration, the same like it's still fluid because it's like 90% is water content. So you do have that hydration impact of it, but just be careful how that's going to plan appetite. Is there questions about juices?
I think,
whole milk, skim milk. Yes.
Yeah.
I would just, whichever preference. I'm one that I'm not going to tell you to drink 1% milk because I think it's blue water. I don't know. If you want to drink it, go for it. I'm not making you. I feel like there is if you drink 2 to 3 cups, then whatever you drink is your choice. But I like whole milk and reduced fat milk. And I think that it did not make ones lose weight or gain weight. I think it would if you drink a gallon. And we can talk about how many cups you get. But when you stay within 2 to 3 cups, enjoy your milk however you like it.
great. And within that question, just thinking more about milks, there's a lot of new milks on the market. Soy milk, almond milk, oat milk. I mean, there's tons of them. Any ones we need to be careful for?
Oh my goodness. Milk alternative is a market right now. If anybody want to buy stocks, this is a good time to go into those.
True.
I was like macadamia nuts milk, cashew milk. Like I went, and of course I have to stay kind of on top. Like I spend a lot of time at grocery store, have nothing to do with my list, but I have to see what I need to know. And so there's a lot of milk out there. Some of them is it's just water flavor, unfortunately. The milk that have more nutrient, and I don't have any disclaimers with any financial disclaimer, but the one that is really more nutrients to it and worth your money is I find oats tends to be high in carbs. So if you think about any adults that have concerns about diabetes, and I want to watch that a little, but pea protein milk, so Ripple is one, is pretty good. It's like nutritious. So for kids, toddlers who families don't want to give them cow milk, oats and pea protein milk are good. Almond milk still acceptable. It depends on the brand too. Coconut milk is one. Okay, so rice and coconut milk are the one that have the least nutrient. Coconut milk do not have any protein in it, at least the one that I checked. So it's just like some of them, they do add a little calcium supplements in there, but they just not have nutrients, and it's fuel up. It just still have the calories, so it's fuel you up. So if we think about, like, again, solid food and fluid, you want to be cautious of some of those. So I guess my go-to ones that, so hemp milk has better in there. Soy milk is fine. It's been there forever. There is concerns about like the cleanliness of it because of the estrogen-like and all those. So some don't like soy milk and preferences. It's more come down to preference. But if you focus on nutrition only, oats, soy, and pea protein milk are one of the 3 that have more nutrition.
Awesome. There has been conversation around coconut water and how good it is to hydrate you. Is that true, or is that another one that might be just a hype?
The real coconut water, growing up in the tropical, I pick them from the tree and just crack them up and drink it. Those ones are like, that's where the research based on. I've not found a coconut things in the container that taste anything close to that. So, and they are quite pricey. So the coconut, yes, there's definitely evidence behind the powerful hydration of it. It's actually some is shown the real coconut, the fresh coconuts are better than some of the, like equivalent to IV fluid. That's pretty powerful. But the one that you buy in the store, I think there's a lot of additives to it, and it's water, and how much of this is like real coconut base, and then how much is water added to it. It's the same things like orange juice, like you say 100% orange juice. You think how many oranges is to make a cup of orange juice? There gotta be some water added to it and sugar. The things about labeling is when you hit a certain percent, you can claim it. And I think that's the thing that conceive into the consumer is their label. It's 100%, but you don't have to put 100% in it. You meet a certain percent, you can claim that. Same thing for the coconut water. So it is tasty. It's so expensive. I haven't found anything that's less than $3 for a carton. And so if something you could do is much better than, I think it's a little better than Gatorade and some of the other juices, but it's like money. Like, do you want to spend that on that, or you want to spend it on food?
That's powerful. Yeah. So what I'm getting from that is, if you want to get hydrated in regards to coconut, go get a real coconut, crack it open and drink the juice from there. Very
hard to find, but they're quite refreshing.
Yeah, which is really interesting to think that it was comparable to almost IV fluid. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when I share some of these things, like we think about, like, is this good food good for you? And say yes, but I always go back to how do I maintain a balanced diet for the whole family on a budget. I think that's where my heart is.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. Yeah. I like what you're saying too, because you're really pushing us to think when we go in the grocery store, right? Like to think about what it would take to have, if that coconut water or whatever we're looking at, in order for it to be absolutely pure, how much it would really take for that to happen. And so paying attention to the fads, it sounds like to me what I'm taking away too is it really comes back to eating good foods, vegetables and fruits, paying it, these natural things that grow and making sure we're consuming them. You have a question about adding fruits and vegetables to water, the flavored water at home. If you want to add some strawberries, for example, to your water, is that welcomed?
Oh my goodness, go for it. Go for it. It's just like you can literally add cucumbers, slice strawberries, put some blueberry, pineapple, oranges, put some mint in there. Because kids tell me water smell. And sometimes I agree with them, depends where I travel. Some of the water smell and taste weird. And so that's when you add some of those things in, is make it fun. And frozen vegetable fruits, add them in there in your water. That'd be perfect. And then you can save a lot of money paying for those, bottles.
Nice. Harry, I hear you make some really good fruit water out there. So we'll have to come by and try some sometime. Thank you, Phuong. I think you got all your questions on this slide.
All righty. So let's go into, I saved this slide because usually we started with like, what are some of the concerns, and then I was like, well, we already have a chronic illness. I don't want to hear about that. So I was hoping to switch it up. So it's like this. So this slide is why I spent a lot of time on information earlier. And again, I want to acknowledge, like, some of these things takes a lot of sacrifice, planning, consistency, like self-discipline for yourself, and then you're being consistent when you prepare meals for your kids. But these are reasons why nutrition is so important, and you can do something about it. I think that's the powerful part, is you could do something about it, so you can help living with sickle cell a little more manageable. So we touch base on a little about iron overload, not having enough protein. Again, it has to do with your muscle strength. It has to do with your immune system. It has to do with how effective some of these medications will be when you take them, how effective they are. If you don't have adequate protein, those are called transport protein, then your body, the medication not works as good. I think the excessive carbohydrates intake, and this is where I focus on not drinking your carbs, calories, and trying to save energy, save appetite and space for real food is for this reason. And that's when we focus more of a whole grain, because they're giving you more nutrients than just the carbs. The inadequate growth in childhood, adolescence is where my heart is. I want to make sure, because this is where sometimes I do oral supplements that I do equivalent to like Pediasure or Ensure. I do more plant-based organic when it comes to supplements for kids. I will always advocate for those because I think is there benefits in it. Pediasure is great, is accessible, we provide them, insurance cover them like easy, but I also know there's other supplements out there that provide the same nutrition and they have less of the additives and things. So I look into more of giving kids better choices. A lot of time they go for the least expensive things possible, but when it comes to growing a little human, I like to make sure I give them the best that we can. So vitamins and mineral deficiencies, and this is where your fruit and vegetables, because not one food have one vitamin, they have a combo and they complement each other. So diversify. The other concerns in adults is just weight gains in adults, because when you think of like having not enough lean muscle mass and then you have active carbs intake, the extra carbs anything extra carbs, fat, protein will all convert to fat, regardless how they come about in the beginning. At the end, if you have extra, they're going to store as fat. The other thing about fat storage is they have the little cells to store fat in there, and they only gonna grow. Those cells is growing. They never gonna they shrink or they grow, but you cannot remove those cells. So we trying to not grow more fat cells. And I think that's where we want to make sure what we eat is in balance, and that's where fibers comes in, because if you have a good source of carbs that have fibers, and it's less likely for you to have excessive of it. Fiber, one of the things is make you take time to chew your food. And none of us really take time to eat our food. I plan school to start. They only give kids about 15 or 12 minutes to eat their lunch. So we learn how to eat really fast, and with time constraint, we all eat really fast. So having some fiber food tend to slow us down by nature of the food for us to like eat and chew food. And so it's, and in a way, safe is kind of help us eat less of things sometimes. That's the beautiful side effect of fiber. Okay. So then come into that, like children, I pick out these things. This is what's common in children is high. They have a really high energy need. Not only the sickle cells put them into a high metabolism, but they have growth going on. So when you cook that, the two together, you want to be careful with it. Poor appetite or picky eating is a huge thing. When you tell kids to eat fruit and vegetable, that's when it's not as easy as it seems. And then constipation is the other thing that prevent kids from eating enough. So this is some of the things commonly that I look out for and trying to help my families with addressing these. So let's go into a little about picky eating. how do you get the kid to eat what they need to eat? Well, the news is everybody.
Phuong,
Yeah.
when you, as you're saying this, I know there's also adults with sickle cell on here. If
Mhm.
you can also push this towards also not just children, but how do you unstick from being a picky eater, even if you're an adult, might be interesting.
Yeah. So we'll touch on that on these next couple of slides.
Sounds great.
So when we talk about eating, like, so I will catch some audience today with, you know, have kids where you start early, and then some will like a different span of life. So I try to will include that in there. But we start out with really creating a relationship where there's responsibility. When it's kids, like as parents, there is a boundary what you do, like you offer. And the thing is, if you have kids and you want your kid to eat something, you have to eat it too. And if you're adults and you want to try it, then you want to eat certain things, then you need to have them. Like you need to consistently have them. And so it's a whole family affair when it comes to nutrition. Is the whole family needs to do it. So when it's kids, to help kids, it's like you do. Having this relationship is actually really helpful because it helps with meals. Food is nourished for your body, and is no trying to avoid these meal struggle as much as possible. So parents would provide, you know, when you're gonna feed, what you're gonna feed, and then where you're gonna feed. And then the other party will decide how much they will eat and whether or not they will eat. They will need to try, right? It actually takes 25 steps from seeing a food to actually learn how to eat it. And the same rules apply for adults. So if you have a food that you haven't, like you never tried, you have to start. And it will not, it takes from like seeing it, smelling it, tasting it, and eventually chew it and swallow it. So this, you gotta give your time, because if you want to eat something, you take a first bite, whoa, it's not gonna go well, then it's out. And should not be how it is. You gotta like acquaint yourself over time, and you will eat it 80% of time. There'll be 20% of time you can try over and over, and then one time you're like either this or nothing, like you will stop trying. But 80% of time you will add them in if you give them enough time. So really time is like, if these food are good for you and you need to diversify, give it a chance and try it more than once. And it takes like really steps to get up there. Like it takes from seeing it, prepare, smell, taste before you choose and swallow. I think I probably, I will share these slides for kind of like for you to look over, because I want to make sure we talked a little about like adults as well. But the basic rule is to be familiar with food, get to know it, help prepare it, so kids can actually learn to be around it and then have a better chance to consume it. For adults, I think most of us, even young children, you want to know why you want to do this. Like if you want to eat these foods, you want to know why. So I'm hoping some of the information early helps you understand, like help you remember or know why you want to do these, because these are the best way to help you manage this condition. Like you can change it out and you will feel better. The thing about getting the right plan of nutrition for your body is when you get this right plan, it will reinforce itself. You will feel better. And then you learn like your body will be more accepting of it. So we need to know the why you want to do these food. And then you need to have an open mind and try cooking it in different ways. And a lot of times family ask, was there cookbooks? And I used to go for cookbooks, but now with all the YouTubes and things, you just search it. Like whichever ingredients you have at home, and whatever, like how to cook kale with whichever spice, and they will pop up for you. So I think it's more like just in time. And you can, for ones who don't cook often, you can actually see people cooking them, and so you're not so, like, oh my goodness, it doesn't feel like a chore when you prepare these foods, because some of us don't cook. And so to read the cookbook is one thing, know what's in there, but then how you actually put them together is another thing. So I like the video instructions on YouTube for that reason. You can search anything, any recipes. I like to use that instead of buy cookbooks, because cookbooks, you kind of stick to one kind of like style and whatnot, but you can really try to explore anything online nowadays. So I would recommend just look at some of these videos and learn how to cook some of these foods. But when fruit and vegetable, one thing, you gotta spice it up, because it's just planned to be. The meat is easy. Steak, you can just eat them and they just taste good how it is. But fruit and vegetable, especially vegetable, you need to spice it up and use a lot of herbs and spices to flavor it instead of salt. And their salt is fine, but if you use a lot of like spices and herbs to make it smells good, you have a much better chance enjoying those foods. So I'm actually gonna skip through some of these. It's for you. I think this one I want to spend, just to wrap it up with, this is meal planning. Lots and lots of questions about like, how do I plan meals? What food should I cook? And I try to keep it as general as possible, because there's culturally, every family has different kind of food pantry that I have. And so when I do meal planning, it's kind of box you into this one kind of like diet, like food preference. And I like it. So I think of food groups. You think of food groups, and if you think of in the sense of food groups, you will able to use whatever you have at home, and whichever category, like vegetable, whichever vegetable you have at home will use for that. But you want to plan for at least 3 food groups. You want to always plan for protein, starch, and vegetables for meals. And even for snacks. For snacks, it's easier to do some kind of protein or carbs or both. And then you can have a fruit. Fruits usually is a lot easier for snacks and breakfast time. Vegetables are friendly to include in lunch and dinner. And so you think food groups, because that way you can have any vegetables you have at home that your family tend to eat. Because when I counsel a family from Kenya versus, another family, there will be different foods. So I just think food groups, and just 3 is where you want to start with. Carbs, protein, whichever that protein is, and trying to diversify it. So this is one of the recipe. So this one is like brown rice, lentil, spinach, and all these vegetables. And I just make brown rice, lentil, stir fry, make it more like a stir fried, and then lentils and these spices in there. And that's a complete meal. This one is a perfect complete meal. But try not to get so narrow down to a certain item recipe, but try food groups, because there will be days where you may only have 2 groups in there. But most of the times, like you have ample, if we have 7 days a week and 3 meals a day, that's roughly 20. Trying to aim for like 80% of times, you're trying to get the 3 food groups in there. And there will be live when you out and about and you travel or you work and you skip lunch and whatnot, those will happen. But if you have 3 food groups in your meals, you will hit most of the vitamins and minerals and nutrition that you need. Okay. And I think that's where I am gonna, that's all I have to share. So I share my contact here. Foxy, you have my contacts. I really want to be a resource for you all, for one here and one, potentially watching or do later. And because there's many resources that you could tap into to live and enhance, life, quality of life. And if there's anything I can add to share, please reach out.
Awesome. Oh, wow. This has been really, really wonderful. You can go ahead and we can stop sharing your screen just so we can see folks. Thank you, Phuong. I learned a lot. I know I did. But I just want to say thank you. Does anyone else want to say I like to give props where props are due. And honestly, you gave us a lot of education today. So thank you so much for this. We really appreciate it. I did put in the chat Phuong's information. So if you want to email her, you're more than welcome to. I know one last question that someone did ask was simply about carbs and how much carbs we should have each day. If you could answer that real quick, I think that was the final question. I don't want to miss that.
That's also a great question. This is a hard question. It's hard because it depends on your needs, like age stages. But I want to say that carbs, when we aim for carbs, if you think of your plate, think of a round plate. And if whichever you have on your plate, you do a third of it is carb. The recommendation from the Academy is a quarter of it. And I find that it's great if you could do, but it's very hard. So you do a third of your plate is carb, and then a third is vegetables and fruit or all fruit, and then a third of protein. It gets you a really good place to start. So when you look at your plate, like if you're gonna have spaghetti and there's tomato, which kids convince me that it's a vegetable. And I was like, yep, it is, but how much you need to add something else to it. So if you think of spaghetti, you want to see proportional how much of it is the noodles by itself and how much is a sauce. And then what's your source of protein in there? Because otherwise, when you just have spaghetti and sauce, that will be like 75% of carbs. So you kind of like miss that high portion already. So if you aim it about a third, you'll be in a good place. And anyone wants to reach out to me and share, like if I know a little more about, your size and what you eat, then I can help you with that in a little more. The good place to go into is myplate.org. It's a USDA plate. You can actually put in your weight, your heights, and it will tell you about how much nutrition you need, and it's a good place to start. So I put it in here, myplate.gov, actually myplate.gov. And it's a great site where you can just start with those. I think when you have your kids care for at Odessa Brown, I'm there. And so if you want to chat, just let Alex or Bender or Patricia. Patricia is covering for Alex. She's out with her beautiful baby. And then if you need help seeing somebody at Marebridge, just let me know. I'm still there. I know how to connect you with that. But Dr. Oh my goodness, what is Rebecca? I forgot the doctor name. She's okay. The team at Marebridge will connect you.
Yeah,
for sure. But I think it's nice to get like just a meet and greet and just kind of like watch and like just do a general assessment, just so it gives you a peace of mind. And then that will be, just to get some idea what else we can do, because we all have some in life. We all have something, some illnesses that we all have at one point in life, but we can live life to the fullest. And there's lots of resources available.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks, Phuong. You have really gave us a lot of information. I love that I feel like you gave us tools I like your point of there is something we can do. And I think that's really powerful. That's empowerment to say, there's certain things we can't control in sickle cell, but there's other things we do. So the challenge now, guys, is to practice what we learned, to put it into practice. So we got to hold each other accountable. So when you go out here and only eat 2 ribs, Jason, instead of your 4, you can text back out to us and let us know you're practicing, right? And
Yeah.
Ken loading up on those vegetables, because we know that, you know, broccoli was not your favorite. So
Yes, still not.
Yep. And
All
I
right.
think just share what you find out. I think
Yeah.
you do and you share, that's powerful. And that's
Yeah.
how I learned from working with family. I learned a lot. And then
Yeah.
I reshare. And that's how it
Awesome.
works.
And I love that you put grits and collard greens on this slide. I'm in. I mean, I think that being culturally relevant to where we are is really important. It makes it accessible to us. So,
Yep.
all right. I know it's time to go. So thank you all. Remember, Ken hosts on Thursday nights a hangout time on Zoom. You're more than welcome to go anytime Thursdays at 8 p.m. That information is on our website. You can also, Seattle Children's has a mindfulness class that they do every Wednesday at 8 p.m. You're more than welcome to attend. We have game night every second Saturday, and fourth Saturdays is education. Our next education time, we will be talking about mental health for adults and caregivers. I'm not answering you, Jason, for adults and caregivers. And it's going to be a great time with Kiara. She is a counselor, mental health counselor. And so come learn about how to take care of yourself mentally. It's really, really important, especially with COVID. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.
Yeah. Have a wonderful
Tom.
day.
You too.
Bye.
You did a good job, Miss Foxy.
Thank you, Mr. Jason. Bye, everyone.